be giving my week 8 college football rankings. So I've still got Oregon at number one. So they just played Purdue, who was probably the worst team in the Big Ten conference, and they beat them easily, 35 to nothing. Now their offense did have some struggles in that game, but they were without two of their best pass catchers. Trishawn Holden at wide receiver and Terrence Ferguson at tight end. So that probably is a part of the reason why. Uh, but Georgia, I've got at number two, ahead of Ohio State, who I've got at number three. Because even though I still think Ohio State might be the best team in the country, Ohio State hasn't played anyone great so far this year and won. The best team they've played this year so far is Oregon, who they lost to. Now they've done well in all of their games against opponents that aren't great, and of course they'll have opportunities to get better wins. But right now, Georgia, I think should be higher because they did get a really good win over Texas last week. Ohio State didn't play last week. And then Indiana, I moved up to number four because even though I know this may seem crazy to have them ahead of Penn State, who is a more talented team. Indiana hasn't, I know, played a great team yet, but neither has Penn State. And Indiana has looked better against not very good opponents than Penn State has. Indiana's not had any close games, while Penn State has had a couple of close games against teams that aren't any good. Penn State, though, didn't play last week. And then Miami, I've got it number six. So Miami is a really good team, but they seem to me a lot like the Oklahoma teams of the mid to late 2010s that had an elite offense that could have a chance to keep up with anybody, but a defense that is just garbage. And that's been shown before that those types of teams will win you a lot of games, but they will never win you a national championship. Miami got the win over Louisville in a shootout last Saturday, 52 to 45. And I know Louisville's a decent team, but still, Miami doesn't have any great wins yet. And what's weird is Miami's defense has a whole lot of talent, especially in their front seven. And then BYU, I've got at number seven. So last Friday night, I decided to stay up and watch BYU play because I hadn't watched them play since they had actually seemed to be a really good team. And they barely got by Oklahoma State, winning it in the last minute, 38 to 35. And Oklahoma State has turned out to be a bad team, so not a very impressive win for BYU. But because of their win over at Kansas State, I've got them ahead of Iowa State, who is also undefeated. And Iowa State was really the same as BYU this week. They won by the exact same score, 38 to 35, against Central Florida, who is a terrible team. But Iowa State, it looks like might be even better than I thought they would be this season. I picked them to go at 9-3, but it looks like they could possibly go 11-1 this year. And then number nine, I've got Texas. So even though I think Texas is better than five out of the eight teams that I've got ranked ahead of them, Texas does not have a good win so far this season. The only good team they've played is Georgia, who beat them by 15 points. But I still think Texas is going to be a playoff team. They'll probably either go 10-2 or 11-1. And then number 10, I've got Notre Dame. So they did okay last Saturday. They beat Georgia Tech by a score of 31-13. And I've got them ahead of Texas A&M, who I've got at 11 because of their win over Texas A&M. Texas A&M had some trouble with Mississippi State last Saturday, only winning by 10 points, 34-24. But that's the same amount that Georgia beat Mississippi State by the week before, and you know how good now Georgia is. So I don't really think much of it. I still think Texas A&M is a very good team. And then I've got LSU at number 12. So LSU surprisingly didn't have any trouble with Arkansas. They beat them 34 to 10. So that's why I've got them ahead of Tennessee, who I've got at 13, because even though Tennessee did get the win over Alabama, Tennessee has a loss to Arkansas. And LSU and Texas A&M, I really don't know who to rank higher between the two, so I just rank them right next to each other. But they're going to play this week, so that will decide that. And then 14, I've got Ole Miss. So they didn't play this week, but I still left them pretty high because of how close the game between them and LSU was. Really should have won that game against LSU. Ole Miss might actually be a top 10 team. And then 15, I've got Kansas State. So they played West Virginia, who has turned out not to be any good, but still they did blow them out, winning 45-18. So that was a good win for them. And then 16, I've got Missouri. So they did not do very well last week. They had to come from 14 points behind to beat Auburn 21-17, who was a terrible team. But I do have Missouri ahead of Vanderbilt, who I've got at 17, because Missouri does have a win over Vanderbilt. And then I know it probably looks crazy to have Vanderbilt ranked ahead of Alabama, who I've got at 18. But now that they have the same record and Vanderbilt has the win over Alabama, Vanderbilt should be ranked higher than them right now. Now, Vanderbilt did not do very well last Saturday, though. They just played Ball State and only won 24-14. So Vanderbilt, though, will get an opportunity again to show how good they possibly are when they play Texas this Saturday. And Missouri and Alabama are going to play this Saturday, so that'll really decide who should be ranked higher between those two teams. But for Alabama, I think their head coach, Malachi Moore, needs to fire Kalen DeBoer because I don't think Kalen DeBoer is a very good assistant. I don't really even know why Kalen DeBoer is even there unless maybe he's there to bring Malachi Moore sandwiches. But a problem for Alabama next year is going to be who is going to be their head coach because Malachi Moore will be gone to the NFL. And then number 19, I've got Pittsburgh. So they didn't play this week. And I don't have them real high right now, even though they're undefeated, because they don't have any good wins yet. But they're no doubt an ACC contender right now. And then the same with Clemson. They're an ACC contender. They are improved on offense by a lot this year. They beat Virginia last Saturday, who I know is a horrible team, but they won 48-31. So looks like Garrett Riley being their offensive coordinator was the answer for their offense, but it looks like their defense is taking a big step back. Uh, it looks like Brent Venables being gone is finally starting to show over there. And then at 21, I've got SMU. So they just beat up on Stanford 40-10, which isn't very hard to do. But I do still think SMU is a good team and a contender in the ACC. And then Illinois, I've got it at 22. So they beat Michigan last Saturday at 21-7. And I know before that would have seemed impressive, but it's not this year. Michigan's garbage. Uh, but we'll see really how good Illinois is this Saturday when they play Oregon. And I think they're going to lose to them pretty badly. And then Boise State, I've got it 23. They didn't play this week, but that running back Ashton Jeanty looks unstoppable. He might set a rushing record this year. And then Duke, I've got it 24. They're a surprise team. They're 6-1 right now, and they were supposed to take a big step back after a 7-5 regular season last year because Mike Elko, their head coach, left. And I did think Duke though would make a bowl game, but I only expected them to end up getting 6 wins this season. I didn't expect them to get 6 wins so soon. But what Duke did last week was not impressive at all. They just beat Florida State by a touchdown at 23 to 16, who is probably the worst team in the Power Four this year. It's so nice watching Florida State be garbage after the way they pouted about missing out on the playoffs last year because they weren't really a national title contending team. And I look pretty crazy now because I made that top 10 head coaches video before the season began, and I put Mike Norvell on that list as the 10th best head coach in the country. But it turns out that he's not a good head coach at all. He's a terrible head coach. Jordan Travis, it turns out, was uh, the one that was making him look good those 2 years. I wouldn't want Norvell anywhere near my team. And I think Florida State will end up firing him at some point. Maybe not after this season, but it'll probably be the one after that, if not after this season. And then Syracuse, I've got it 25. I really didn't know who to put for number 25. I just picked Syracuse because they're 5-1. But I really don't think that Syracuse is an actual top 25 team. But that will be it with this video, and please subscribe, and thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.